The moment he opened his mouth, the entire theater froze, and by the end of that note, even Simon Cowell's jaw was on the floor. But trust me, you need to stay until the very last second of this story, because what happened after the final note? No one, not even the judges, saw it coming. And if stories like this inspire you, make sure you like this video and subscribe, because sometimes one voice can change everything. The bright lights of America's Got Talent felt hotter than the Manila sun. Backstage, 22-year-old Marco Reyes adjusted the collar of his thrift store blazer. He was slim, 5 feet 7 inches, with warm brown skin and neatly combed black hair slicked back in an old-school style. In his hand, he clutched a worn photograph of his mother standing outside their tiny home in Quezon City. The edges of the photo were soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. Marco grew up in the Philippines idolizing one man, Elvis Presley. While other kids played basketball in the narrow streets, Marco would stand on a wooden crate and sing "Can't Help Falling in Love" into a broken hairbrush. His neighbors laughed. "Elvis? You? You don't even look like him," they would tease. They were right. He didn't. He wasn't American. He didn't have a deep Southern accent. He didn't wear rhinestone suits. He was just a skinny Filipino boy with a big dream and a voice he didn't fully understand yet. His father had passed away when Marco was 15. From then on, it was just him and his mother. She worked double shifts washing clothes for wealthier families. Some nights, Marco could hear her coughing from exhaustion. That sound haunted him more than any stage fright ever could. "I'll sing for you one day, Ma," he used to whisper. When he auditioned for local talent shows in Manila, judges told him the same thing over and over. "You're good, but it's outdated. Elvis is old news. Be more modern." But Marco didn't want to chase trends. He wanted to honor the music that saved him during his darkest nights. One evening, while scrolling on his cracked phone, he saw auditions for America's Got Talent were open internationally. The idea felt impossible. The flight alone cost more than 6 months of their rent. He didn't tell his mother at first. Instead, he started singing on the streets after school, outside jeepney stops and small markets. Coins clinked into a plastic cup. Some days he made enough for rice. Other days, nothing. Then something unexpected happened. A stranger recorded him singing and uploaded it online. Within days, the video spread across Filipino communities overseas. Donations started coming in. A Filipino restaurant owner in Los Angeles offered to help with the ticket. When Marco finally told his mother, she cried, not because she was afraid, but because she believed. The day he landed in America, he felt small. The buildings were taller. The streets were wider. Everything seemed louder. Now backstage, a production assistant called his name. Marco Reyes. His hands trembled as he stepped onto the massive stage of America's Got Talent. The audience clapped politely, curious but unsure. At the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, arms folded, expression neutral. Next to him were Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel. Simon leaned forward slightly. "And what are you going to sing for us?" Marco swallowed. "An Elvis Presley song, sir." A few murmurs rippled through the crowd. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Elvis? That's a big risk." Marco nodded. "Yes, sir." The music began softly. The opening chords of "If I Can Dream" filled the theater. For the first 2 seconds, the audience looked skeptical. Then Marco sang. His voice wasn't an imitation. It wasn't karaoke. It was rich, controlled, trembling with emotion, but powerful. It carried years of hunger, grief, hope, and quiet resilience. Sophia's smile faded into shock. Howie's eyes widened. Heidi placed a hand over her chest. And Simon, the famously hard-to-impress judge, slowly leaned forward. His eyes narrowed, not in criticism, but in disbelief. When Marco reached the high note in the final chorus, the sound soared across the auditorium like a wave crashing into silence. Then it happened. Simon's jaw literally dropped. The camera zoomed in on his stunned expression as the audience erupted into a standing ovation before the song even ended. Marco finished the final line with tears in his eyes. For a second, there was silence, the kind that feels sacred. Then thunder. The entire theater stood on their feet. Marco couldn't move. He just stood there, breathing hard, staring at the crowd that moments earlier had doubted him. Simon spoke first. "I have heard thousands of singers," he said slowly. "And I did not expect that. That wasn't an impersonation. That was heartfelt. That was you." Marco's lip trembled. Heidi said, "You made Elvis proud." Sophia wiped a tear. "Your mom must be so proud right now." Marco nodded, unable to speak. Then Howie said, "This is why we have this show." For yes. But that wasn't the end. As Marco thanked the judges and prepared to walk off stage, Simon stopped him. "Wait." The crowd quieted instantly. Simon looked at him for a long moment. "You said you sing for your mother, right?" "Yes, sir." "Where is she?" "She's in the Philippines. She couldn't afford to come." Simon exchanged a glance with the producers. Moments later, the giant screen behind Marco flickered to life. There she was. His mother, standing in a small living room in Quezon City, watching through a live stream. Tears streamed down her face as she covered her mouth. "Marco," she cried through the screen. Marco fell to his knees. The audience gasped. Simon spoke softly. "We thought she deserved to see this moment properly." The crowd roared again. Marco stood, hands shaking, staring at the screen. "Ma, we did it." His mother smiled through tears. "You did it, Anik." In that moment, it wasn't about Elvis. It wasn't about America. It wasn't about fame. It was about a son who refused to let poverty define his future. Weeks later, Marco's audition clip went viral. Filipino communities around the world shared it proudly. Messages flooded in from strangers saying his performance reminded them of home, of sacrifice, of dreams they once buried. But the most important message came from his mother: "No matter what happens next, you already won." Marco didn't win the entire competition that season. But he won something bigger. He proved that talent has no nationality. That dreams don't expire. That honoring your roots is never outdated. And somewhere in that theater, even Simon Cowell, the toughest critic of them all, learned that sometimes the biggest shock doesn't come from flashy tricks or modern trends. It comes from a young man with an old song and a heart full of gratitude. So if you're sitting there right now thinking your dream is too old, too strange, too impossible, remember Marco. Remember the boy who sang Elvis in the streets of Manila. Remember the jaw that dropped. And most importantly, remember this: you don't have to look like the legend to carry their spirit. You just have to believe. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Because somewhere out there, another Marco is waiting for their moment, and your support might be the reason they don't give up. And trust me, the next voice that shocks the world could be yours. Before the first note even echoed through the auditorium, a few people were already smirking. By the time the last note hit, those same people were on their feet, screaming, and Simon Cowell's jaw wasn't just dropped, it was history. Stay with me until the end of this story, because what happened after the standing ovation is something no one watching that night will ever forget. And if stories like this remind you why dreams matter, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because the next unbelievable moment might just inspire you. 23-year-old Daniel Cruz stood center stage on America's Got Talent with shaking hands and a heartbeat so loud he was sure the microphone could pick it up. He wore a simple white button-down shirt tucked into black slacks, his black hair styled in a careful pompadour he had practiced for weeks in front of a cracked mirror back home in Cebu. His shoes were polished, but old. His suit wasn't flashy. There were no rhinestones, no glittering cape. But there was fire in his eyes. Daniel grew up in a two-room home near the docks, where cargo ships came and went and the air smelled like salt and rust. His father was a fisherman who spent more nights at sea than at home. His mother sold grilled bananas by the roadside. Money was counted carefully. Rice was stretched thin. Electricity sometimes flickered out without warning. Music was their luxury. Every Sunday, his father played old records on a second-hand turntable, and that's where Daniel first heard the voice that would change his life. Elvis Presley wasn't just a singer to him. He was power. Confidence. Escape. While other kids dreamed of becoming basketball stars, Daniel stood in front of a small electric fan, letting it blow against his face as he sang, pretending it was a roaring crowd. His cousins laughed. His classmates rolled their eyes. Elvis? That's for old people, they said. But when Daniel sang, something happened. The noise of the world disappeared. The fear. The shame. The smallness. It all faded. Years later, after his father was injured in a storm at sea and could no longer work, Daniel dropped out of college to help support the family. He worked construction during the day and sang in a small seaside bar at night. The bar was dim, the stage barely big enough for 2 people. Sometimes tourists clapped politely. Sometimes they talked over him. Still, he sang like he was performing for thousands. One evening, a traveler recorded him singing "Suspicious Minds" and posted it online. Within weeks, the video found its way to Filipino communities abroad. Comments flooded in, "You need to audition. AGT next. The world needs to hear you." Daniel laughed at first. It felt impossible. But impossible had never stopped him before. Now, under the bright lights of America's Got Talent, the judges stared back at him. At the center sat Simon Cowell, known for turning hopefuls into headlines with a single sentence. Simon glanced at the card in front of him. "Daniel, what are you going to sing?" "An Elvis Presley song, sir." The audience murmured. A few scattered chuckles. Simon leaned back slightly. "That's brave." Daniel nodded. "I've been brave my whole life." The music began. It wasn't one of the upbeat rock songs people expected. Instead, the soft intro of "If I Can Dream" filled the theater, a song about hope, unity, and longing for a better tomorrow. For a split second, doubt hovered in the air. Then Daniel sang. His voice wasn't just strong, it was textured. It carried exhaustion from construction shifts, tenderness from helping his mother count coins at night, determination from years of being told he was chasing the wrong era. Every word felt lived in. By the first chorus, the crowd stopped whispering. By the second, people were leaning forward in their seats. The camera cut to Simon. His eyebrows slowly lifted. His lips parted slightly. His arms, once crossed, now rested on the table as he stared at Daniel without blinking. When Daniel hit the final sustained note, clear, soaring, unwavering, it felt like the entire theater was holding its breath. Then silence. A heavy, electric silence. And then explosion. The audience jumped to their feet. Cheers thundered through the auditorium. Some people were crying openly. A woman in the front row covered her mouth in shock. Simon Cowell didn't clap at first. He just stared. His jaw dropped. Not exaggerated. Not for the cameras. Genuinely dropped. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than usual. "I didn't expect that," he admitted. "That wasn't an impersonation. That was emotional. You took a classic and made it feel urgent. Real." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. Simon continued, "You know what surprised me the most? You made me forget I was judging." The audience roared again. For yes came quickly. But the most powerful moment happened off-script. As Daniel thanked the judges, he pulled something from his pocket, a small, folded photograph of his father sitting beside the sea. "My father can't hear very well anymore," Daniel said softly into the mic, "but he told me before I left, even if I can't hear you sing on that stage, I will feel it." The audience quieted instantly. And I hope he felt that. Back in Cebu, in a modest living room filled with neighbors, his father watched the broadcast with tears streaming down his weathered face. He couldn't hear every word clearly. But he didn't need to. Weeks after the audition aired, Daniel's performance spread across social media. Messages poured in from overseas Filipino workers, from parents who sacrificed everything, from young dreamers who felt stuck between responsibility and ambition. Daniel didn't just shock the judges. He reminded millions that your roots are not limitations, they're foundations. He didn't win the entire competition that season. The trophy went to someone else. The headlines moved on. But Daniel returned home to something greater. Opportunity. Recording offers. Invitations to perform. And the look in his father's eyes when he sang at a local festival, pride so deep it needed no translation. Because sometimes winning isn't about confetti or titles. Sometimes it's about standing on the biggest stage of your life and proving that the small boy singing into a fan was never foolish, he was fearless. So if you've ever been told your dream is outdated, too risky, too unrealistic, remember the Filipino Elvis who walked onto that stage with nothing but belief. Remember the silence before the storm. Remember Simon's jaw dropping in disbelief. And remember that courage sounds louder than doubt every single time. If this story touched your heart, take 1 second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. You never know, the next voice that shocks the world might be someone watching right now, wondering if they're brave enough to try. The moment the spotlight hit him, the crowd didn't know what to expect. By the time the last note faded, Simon Cowell's jaw had literally dropped and the entire theater was on its feet, screaming. You need to watch this story all the way to the end, because what happens after the applause is something no one could see coming. And if stories like this inspire you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because sometimes one voice can change everything. 17-year-old Alex Santos had always dreamed big, even when life seemed determined to keep him small. Slim, wiry, and barely 5 feet 6 inches, with short black hair and wide brown eyes that seemed too big for his face, he carried himself like he already belonged on a stage even when he was just singing in the crowded streets of Manila for spare change. His mother worked double shifts at a nearby laundry, her hands cracked and worn, while Alex's father had left years before. Money was tight. Dreams even tighter. But there was one thing Alex had that no one could take, his voice. He grew up on Elvis Presley records his mother had bought secondhand. While the neighborhood kids chased basketballs through narrow alleyways, Alex would stand on a wooden crate and sing, letting his voice soar above the hum of jeepneys and street vendors. The neighbors would laugh, "Elvis? That old singer? You're wasting your time, boy." He didn't listen. Because every time he sang, the world fell away. The pain, the hunger, the endless struggle, for a few minutes, it didn't matter. One day, scrolling through his cracked phone, he stumbled upon the international auditions for America's Got Talent. The idea seemed impossible. Flights, accommodations, entry fees, all far beyond what his family could afford. But Alex couldn't stop thinking, what if this was his only chance? He started singing on bus stops and street corners, recording his performances, sharing them online. A stranger noticed, uploaded a video, and soon it spread across Filipino communities worldwide. Donations poured in, enough to cover his travel. His mother cried when he told her, "Go, Anik. Sing for the world, but don't forget where you came from." Standing backstage on the America's Got Talent stage, Alex felt every heartbeat echo through his chest. The audience was massive. The cameras were relentless. At the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara, and Howie Mandel. Simon's eyes narrowed. "And what are you going to sing?" Alex took a deep breath. "Elvis Presley, sir. If I Can Dream." A few chuckles ran through the audience. Elvis? A Filipino teenager? But Alex didn't hesitate. The music started, soft and haunting. The first notes carried a vulnerability that silenced whispers. Then he sang. Not as a copy. Not as a gimmick. He sang with every struggle he had ever faced, the nights his mother cried, the days he went hungry, the moments everyone told him to give up. His voice trembled and soared, delicate and powerful all at once. Heidi covered her mouth. Sophia's eyes widened. Howie leaned forward in disbelief. And Simon, the judge whose poker face was legendary, slowly leaned closer, staring. His jaw dropped. By the final note, the theater was shaking with applause. Standing ovation. Tears. Phones raised high to capture the moment. Alex fell to his knees, overwhelmed. Simon finally spoke. I've seen thousands of performers. And you? You made me forget I was judging. That was incredible. Real. Alive. Alex smiled, tears running down his cheeks. I sing for my mother, he whispered. She couldn't make it here. Simon nodded. Then let's fix that. On the giant screen behind Alex appeared his mother, standing in their tiny home in Manila. She was crying, smiling, holding her hands to her chest. The audience gasped. Alex couldn't move. Ma! I did it, he whispered. The crowd erupted again. The moment was bigger than a competition. It was proof that talent, love, and perseverance could bridge oceans. Weeks later, his audition video went viral. Messages flooded in from Filipinos around the globe. You give us hope. You represent all of us. Alex didn't win the season. But he won hearts. He won opportunities. He won a stage that proved one voice could move the world. And the message was clear: your dream isn't too big. Your roots aren't a limitation. If you sing from the heart, the world will listen. If this story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe, because somewhere out there, the next Filipino Elvis is waiting, and your support could be the reason they don't give up. Remember, courage is louder than doubt, and dreams are never too late. The lights went down. The camera panned slowly across the audience, and the judges sat silently, expecting another audition they could politely clap at. But nobody was ready for what happened next. One boy, small in stature, carrying nothing but a voice, would shock everyone, and by the end, Simon Cowell's jaw would be literally on the floor. Watch closely, because the story that unfolds is proof that dreams can rise from the most unexpected places. And if it moves you, hit that like button and subscribe. You'll want to see every moment. 17-year-old Elijah Rivera adjusted his collar nervously backstage. His black hair was slightly messy, his white shirt wrinkled from traveling hours on cramped buses. His mother had handed him a folded photograph of their home in Manila before he left, whispering, "Sing not for the judges, sing for your heart." He held it tight as he walked onto the stage of America's Got Talent. The judges' table gleamed under the lights. Simon Cowell's expression was neutral, almost skeptical. Heidi Klum, Howie Mandel, and Sofia Vergara watched with polite curiosity. Elijah's palms were sweaty. His life until this moment had been anything but polite. He grew up in a tiny neighborhood where streets flooded with monsoon rains, where every day was a struggle to help his mother keep food on the table. Music was his escape. On nights when electricity flickered out, he would stand outside under the dim light of a single bulb, singing into a cracked mirror, imagining a stage far bigger than any alley in Manila. And always, his favorite Elvis Presley. Not to copy him. Not to be him. But to feel something bigger than fear. When he finally told his mother he was auditioning for AGT, she laughed softly through tears. Are you serious? America? But then she kissed his forehead. If anyone can do it, it's you. Now, facing the world, Elijah felt small. The first chord of Can't Help Falling in Love rang through the theater. A hush fell. The audience leaned forward, curious, doubtful, impatient. And then he sang. At first, it was soft, almost fragile. But as the notes stretched and soared, the voice carried a lifetime of hope and heartbreak, every struggle, every late night, every sacrifice his mother had made. It wasn't imitation. It wasn't showy. It was raw, it was real, and it was breathtaking. The camera cut to Simon. His usual poker face melted into shock. Heidi's hands flew to her mouth. Sophia's eyes glistened. Howie leaned forward, frozen in disbelief. By the final chorus, the theater was vibrating with applause, but Simon didn't move. His jaw had dropped completely, eyes wide in astonishment. Elijah's final note hung in the air like a prayer. He didn't even realize he was crying. Wow, Simon said finally. That was extraordinary. That was emotion you could feel in your chest. Incredible. Heidi nodded. That was pure heart. Sophia smiled, voice trembling slightly. You've just reminded everyone why we watch this show. Howie leaned back, shaking his head. Unbelievable. But the real magic came afterward. Elijah held up the small photograph of his mother. I sing for her, he whispered. She couldn't come. But I hope she feels it. The giant screen behind him flickered to life, and there she was, his mother, tears streaming down her face, watching live from Manila. The audience gasped. Elijah fell to his knees, overwhelmed, and whispered, "Ma, we did it." Thunderous applause followed. But this moment wasn't about applause. It was about a boy who dared to believe, a mother who sacrificed, and a dream that refused to die. The clip went viral the next day. Millions around the world shared it, inspired by the courage of a young Filipino boy singing Elvis on a stage he never imagined reaching. Messages flooded in from other young dreamers: if he can do it, so can I. Elijah didn't win the season. He didn't leave with the trophy. But he left with something greater, proof that your roots, your struggles, your past, they aren't chains. They're wings. So if you're sitting there wondering whether your dream is too big, too strange, or impossible, remember Elijah. Remember the jaw-dropping moments Simon Cowell couldn't believe. Remember the tears, the heart, the courage. Because dreams are louder than doubt. And sometimes, all it takes is one voice, one small voice, to shake the world. If this story touched your heart, take a second to like this video and subscribe. The next voice that shocks the world could be yours. The lights went dark, and the murmurs in the audience died instantly. Everyone thought this would be another ordinary audition. But the moment a boy stepped on stage, carrying nothing but a microphone and a worn photograph of his mother, the world paused. By the time he finished, Simon Cowell's jaw wasn't just dropped, it had vanished into disbelief. And you need to watch this story all the way to the end, because what happened next will make your heart soar. If it moves you, hit that like button and subscribe. This is the kind of story that proves dreams are unstoppable. 17-year-old Rafael Cruz stood backstage, hands trembling, heart racing. Slim, with dark brown eyes that seemed to hold a storm of emotions, he adjusted his thrifted blazer. His black hair was combed neatly, but he barely noticed. He was too focused on the reason he was here, his mother, who had worked herself to the bone, washing clothes and selling snacks in Manila just to give him a chance. She had handed him a small, folded photograph before he left, whispering, "Sing not to impress anyone, sing to make your heart proud." Rafael grew up in a cramped two-room home in Quezon City. Nights were long, filled with the sound of distant traffic, barking dogs, and the occasional fight in the alley. Money was tight. Opportunities were rarer. But music was his refuge. From the moment he heard Elvis Presley records in his small living room, he knew he had found his calling. Other kids played basketball. Rafael practiced in the streets, standing on crates, singing into a broken hairbrush. Neighbors shook their heads. "Elvis? You? Forget it, boy." They didn't understand. Every note he sang carried hope. Every lyric was a promise to himself that one day, he would show the world his voice, not just for fame, but for survival, for pride, for love. The chance came when a tourist recorded him singing outside a market and uploaded it online. The video went viral. Strangers donated airfare. A Filipino business owner in Los Angeles helped secure a ticket. Suddenly, the impossible felt possible. Now, standing on the massive stage of America's Got Talent, Rafael faced the judges, Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara, and Howie Mandel. His hands shook. His throat tightened. Simon asked, "What are you singing for us?" Raphael swallowed. "Elvis Presley, sir. If I Can Dream." A ripple of whispers ran through the audience. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. But Raphael didn't notice. He had already closed his eyes and opened his heart. The first notes were soft. Fragile, almost tentative. But as the song built, his voice grew rich, controlled, and filled with raw emotion. Every high note, every sustained phrase carried years of struggle, nights when his mother went hungry so he could eat, days when hope seemed impossible, moments he had been laughed at and told he was wasting his time. The audience sat stunned. Sophia covered her mouth. Heidi gasped. Howie leaned forward. And Simon. Simon leaned closer, eyebrows rising, jaw literally dropping as the boy's voice soared. By the final note, the theater erupted. Standing ovation. Cheers. Some cried. Phones raised high to capture the moment. Raphael fell to his knees, tears streaming, overwhelmed by the reality that he had done it. He had sung for his mother, for himself, and for the dream he refused to abandon. Simon spoke first, voice calm but awestruck. That was unlike anything I've ever heard. That was pure heart. Incredible. Heidi added, "You brought something magical to that stage." Sophia smiled, her voice trembling. "You reminded everyone why we watched this show." Howie shook his head. "I can't believe it. Absolutely unbelievable." Then Raphael did something unexpected. He held up the small photograph of his mother and whispered, "I sing for her. She couldn't be here, but I hope she feels it." The screen behind him flickered to life, showing his mother in Manila. Tears streamed down her face. She held her hands over her chest, trembling. The audience gasped. Raphael fell to his knees again, overwhelmed. "Ma, we did it," he whispered. The applause shook the auditorium. But it wasn't about fame. It was about love, sacrifice, and belief. It was about a boy proving that roots aren't limitations, they are strength. Weeks later, the audition went viral worldwide. Messages poured in from young dreamers and parents alike. "You gave us hope. You reminded us dreams are real." Raphael didn't win the season. He didn't take home the trophy. But he left with something far greater, proof that courage, resilience, and passion can shake the world. So if you've ever been told your dream is too small, too old-fashioned, or impossible, remember Raphael. Remember the moment Simon Cowell's jaw dropped. Remember the tears, the applause, the heart. Because dreams aren't about trophies. They're about standing tall when the world says no. They're about singing your truth, even if no one believes you yet. If this story inspired you, like this video and subscribe. The next Filipino Elvis could be someone watching right now, and your support might be the reason they never give up. He stepped on stage, alone, with nothing but a mic and a heartbeat that felt louder than the roaring crowd. By the time the last note left his lips, Simon Cowell's jaw had literally dropped and the audience was on their feet, screaming. But what happened next, no one saw coming. Stick around till the end, because this story proves dreams can come from the most unexpected places. And if it inspires you, hit like and subscribe, you'll want to see the full journey. 17-year-old Javier Santos had grown up in the crowded streets of Manila, where electricity flickered and rain flooded the alleyways. His father had left when he was 5, and his mother worked long hours washing clothes and selling snacks just to keep food on the table. Javier had nothing, really, except a voice that could stop people in their tracks. From an early age, he idolized Elvis Presley. While the other kids played in the street, Javier would climb onto crates, sing into a cracked hairbrush, and imagine bright lights and applause. People laughed at him. "Elvis? You? Forget it," they'd say. But every note he sang was a promise, to his mother, to himself, that one day, the world would listen. The chance came when someone recorded him singing on the street and uploaded the video online. Overnight, it went viral. Filipinos around the world shared it, encouraging him to audition for America's Got Talent. Donations poured in to cover his flight. And when he told his mother, she cried, not out of fear, but because she knew he was destined for something extraordinary. Standing backstage on the AGT stage, Javier's hands shook, but his heart was steady. The bright lights blinded him for a moment, the camera's hum ringing in his ears. At the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara, and Howie Mandel. Simon asked, "And what are you going to sing?" "Elvis Presley." "If I can dream, sir," Javier replied, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. A ripple of whispers ran through the audience. Elvis? In 2026? From the streets of Manila? The music started. Soft, haunting. Then Javier sang, his voice carrying not only notes, but years of hardship, longing, and unshakable hope. Each phrase trembled with emotion, each note soared with determination. The audience was silent. Sophia's hand flew to her mouth. Heidi's eyes widened. Howie leaned forward. And Simon. Simon leaned closer, jaw-dropping, eyes locked on Javier's face. By the final note, the auditorium erupted. Standing ovation. Cheers. Tears. Phones held high. Javier sank to his knees, overwhelmed. Simon finally spoke, quietly but reverently. "I've judged thousands of performances, but that was extraordinary. Real. Alive. Incredible." Heidi nodded. "You brought pure heart to that stage." Sophia smiled, her voice trembling. "You reminded us all why we love music." Then Javier did something unexpected. He held up the photograph of his mother and whispered, "I sing for her. She couldn't be here, but I hope she feels it." The screen behind him lit up. There she was, his mother, sitting in their tiny home in Manila, tears streaming, hands clutching her chest. The audience gasped. Javier fell to his knees again, whispering, "Ma, we did it." Weeks later, his audition went viral worldwide. Messages poured in, "You give us hope. You remind us dreams are real." Javier didn't win the season, but he won hearts, opportunities, and proof that courage and talent can shake the world. If you've ever thought your dream is too small, too strange, too impossible, remember Javier. Remember Simon's jaw-dropping. Remember the tears, the applause, the courage. Dreams aren't about trophies. They're about standing tall, singing your truth, and never giving up. If this story inspired you, like this video and subscribe. The next Filipino Elvis could be watching right now, and your support might be the reason they don't quit. The theater was buzzing with polite curiosity, but no one expected the moment that boy walked on stage. By the time he finished, the crowd was on its feet, cheering, and Simon Cowell's jaw had literally dropped. You'll want to watch this story until the very end. It's a tale about courage, dreams, and a voice that refused to be ignored. And if it inspires you, hit that like button and subscribe, because the next jaw-dropping moment could be yours. 18-year-old Miguel Torres stood backstage, gripping the microphone with hands so shaky he could barely feel them. Slim, dark-haired, and wearing a simple white shirt tucked into faded black jeans, he looked ordinary, almost invisible, to the thousands waiting in the audience. But inside, he carried a fire that had been burning for as long as he could remember. He grew up in a small neighborhood in Cebu City. His father was gone. His mother worked 2 jobs to keep the household afloat. Money was always scarce, and dreams were a luxury. But Miguel had one thing no one could take, his voice. Every night, he would sing Elvis Presley songs into a broken comb, pretending the cracked mirror in his room was a stage, imagining lights and applause, imagining a life beyond the cramped streets. People laughed at him. "Elvis is old news," they said. "Stop wasting your time." But he couldn't stop. Music was hope. Music was freedom. Music was the one place he could be bigger than his circumstances. One day, a stranger recorded him performing on the street and uploaded the video online. Overnight, it went viral. Messages poured in from all over the world, "You belong on a stage. The world needs to hear you." Donations came through, enough to cover airfare to the United States. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "Sing not for anyone else, Anik, sing for yourself." And now he was here, on the massive stage of America's Got Talent. He faced the judges, Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara, and Howie Mandel. Simon looked up from his card. "And what are you singing?" Miguel swallowed. "Elvis Presley, sir. Can't help falling in love." A ripple of laughter ran through the audience. "Elvis? Now? From a Filipino teen?" The music began. At first, soft and trembling. But then, Miguel's voice grew rich, warm, and full of emotion. Every note carried years of struggle, nights of loneliness, sacrifices, and hope. The audience fell silent. Judges leaned in. Simon's eyebrows rose. Heidi's hands flew to her mouth. Sophia's eyes widened. Howie sat forward, stunned. By the final note, the theater erupted. Standing ovation. Shouts. Tears. Phones recording. Miguel sank to his knees, tears streaming. Simon finally spoke, awe in his voice. "That was extraordinary. Not a copy. Not a gimmick. That was heart. Real heart." Heidi nodded. "You brought the music alive." Sophia added, "And you reminded us all why we love performances like this." Then Miguel did something unexpected. He held up the small photograph of his mother. "I sing for her," he whispered. "She couldn't be here tonight, but I hope she feels it." The screen behind him flickered on, and there she was, his mother, crying in their small home in Cebu. The audience gasped. Miguel fell to his knees again. "Ma, we did it," he whispered. Weeks later, his audition video went viral around the globe. He didn't win the season. But he left with something greater, proof that dreams can rise from the humblest beginnings, that courage can move hearts, and that a single voice can inspire millions. So if you've ever been told your dream is too big, too risky, or impossible, remember Miguel. Remember Simon Cowell's jaw-dropping. Remember the tears, the applause, the courage. Dreams aren't about trophies. They're about standing tall, singing your truth, and refusing to give up. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe. The next Filipino Elvis could be someone watching right now. The moment he walked on stage, the audience didn't know what to expect. By the time he sang his first note, the entire theater fell silent. And by the final note, Simon Cowell's jaw wasn't just dropped, it had disappeared into sheer disbelief. This isn't just an audition story. It's about courage, hope, and a voice that refused to be ignored. Stick with it until the end, and if it moves you, like this video and subscribe, because stories like this deserve to be shared. 17-year-old Antonio Rivera had grown up in a small, cramped home in Manila, where the streets flooded during the monsoon and dreams often felt impossible. His father had left years ago, and his mother worked double shifts to keep food on the table. Money was scarce, and hope even scarcer. But Antonio had something that no one could take, his voice. From a young age, he idolized Elvis Presley. While other kids played basketball in the streets, Antonio would climb onto a crate, close his eyes, and sing into a cracked mirror. Neighbors laughed. "Elvis? That's old news," they said. But he didn't stop. Music was his escape, his joy, his promise that one day, the world would listen. One day, a tourist recorded him singing outside a busy market and uploaded it online. Within days, it went viral. Messages poured in, "You need to audition for AGT. The world needs to hear you." Donations came in to cover his flight. His mother hugged him tightly and whispered, "Sing for yourself, Anik. Sing from your heart." Now he was here, standing on the massive stage of America's Got Talent. The judges sat before him, Simon Cowell, Heidi Klum, Sofia Vergara, and Howie Mandel. Simon looked up. "And what are you singing?" "Elvis Presley." "If I can dream, sir," Antonio said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his chest. The music began softly. The first notes were tentative, almost fragile. But then Antonio sang with everything he had, the pain of growing up without a father, the nights he helped his mother stretch a meager meal, the ridicule of neighbors, the long walks in the rain with nothing but hope. His voice soared, trembling, and powerful all at once. The audience was silent. Heidi covered her mouth. Sophia's eyes glistened. Howie leaned forward. And Simon. Simon leaned closer, jaw-dropping in disbelief. By the final note, the auditorium erupted. Standing ovation. Screams. Tears. Phones raced to capture the moment. Antonio sank to his knees, overwhelmed. Simon finally spoke. That was extraordinary. That was emotion you could feel. Real. Incredible. Heidi nodded. You brought the music alive. Sophia smiled. You reminded everyone why we watched this show. Then Antonio held up a small photograph of his mother. I sing for her, he whispered. She couldn't come, but I hope she feels it. The screen behind him flickered on. There she was, his mother, crying in their modest Manila home. The audience gasped. Antonio fell to his knees again. Ma, we did it, he whispered. Weeks later, the audition went viral worldwide. Antonio didn't win the season. But he won hearts, inspiration, and proof that courage, hope, and talent can shake the world. So if someone told you your dream is too big or impossible, remember Antonio. Remember Simon Cowell's jaw-dropping. Remember the tears, the applause, the courage. Dreams aren't about trophies. They're about standing tall, singing your truth, and refusing to give up. If this story inspired you, like this video and subscribe. The next Filipino Elvis could be watching right now, and your support might be the reason they never quit.